Today, my guest was Kait Rhoads, my first glass sculptor to have on the podcast, and we got to talk about things like the Blown Away TV show, which I was watching on Netflix, how difficult glass work is as far as taking a toll on her physical body itself, the issues of gender disparity in the hot shop, I believe that's what they call it, the fact that all artists are planning for their retrospective exhibition and, in the line of like legacy planning, and the fact that career goals are an important part of our industry, because if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, it's really hard to achieve it, and how I still aspire to my retrospective at Guggenheim or MoMA. The Wise Fool, with me, Matthew Dols, as your host, is supported in part by an EEA grant from Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway in an effort to work together for a green, competitive, and inclusive Europe. We would also like to thank our partners Hunt Kastner in Prague, Czech Republic, and Kunstsentrene i Norge in Norway. Links to the EEA grants and our partner organizations are available in the show notes. Could you please pronounce your name correctly for me?
Kait Rhoads. The last name is like the roads you drive on. When I say it, people hear Rose a lot because that D gets lost. Yeah.
But Kait is not a traditional spelling also.
Well, you can't blame a girl for using fashion spelling on her name, nor being in love with Elvis Costello in the late 80s and loving the way his then wife, Kate O'Riordan, spelled her name. I have a little Irish in me, but it's not a family thing. My full name is Catherine, but because when I was young, I had such a temper, Kate kind of stuck, and then I just kept the business name because why not?
Fair enough.
And I'm happy with that because I don't like being called my full name so much by everybody.
I only go by it like in written documents. Very few people call me my full name out loud. Yeah, I can't think of anybody that does. So I'm always fascinated about how people got to be creative. So childhood, were your parents creative? How did you come to being creative in the first place?
Both my parents are creative. My mother, she got very close to graduating from VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University. I believe that's when she got pregnant with my brother in 1966. So but she was very creative. And after my father and her parted ways, she made a lot of wooden sculpture and she painted it. She was a painter when she was younger, but when we were kids, we'd ask her to draw things for us to color in. And also, I was so hyperactive, like I had to be taught how to do macrame to keep my focus somewhere constructive. And I helped my mom with netting, helping. She had a net she would lay out in the river, and we would catch eels and stuff and eat them. So I would help her with the net, probably just sitting by and tying things and untying them because I was a little young. But yeah, she's definitely an inspiration.
So you were born in Richmond, but then you moved.
My father did a semester at sea when he was in high school, and then he wanted to live on the water. Like that was it. He wanted to be gone from the family, but that was a problem because we have a family business in Virginia. It was a department store. So Miller and Rhoads, we were the Rhoads part of Miller and Rhoads. So my father had to go to business school. And so he did that and he did his time in the business. And then he had a boat built and we moved from Richmond to Gloucester, which is closer to the water and on the Chesapeake Bay or a tributary of it near the James River. So yeah, we moved on a boat and we sailed up and down the inland waterway to Florida and the Bahamas, and we lived in the Bahamas for a year or so and the Virgin Islands for 5 years. We did some traveling in between and it was really incredible. So my mother had to entertain us a lot, but my dad was able to take care of the boat and stuff. And I used to knot tie on the boat as well to keep me busy. They like focus my energies doing that too. And sanding is not my favorite thing, but tying ropes, yeah, that's fun.
Well, I was gonna say, sounds like a little fidgety. Are you?
Like when you live on a boat with your family, there's no escaping anything. So yeah, there's a lot of psychological pressure, and neither of my parents are very suited to raising a healthy family. So it percolates. It percolates. Yeah.
I can't even be in a four-bedroom house with my parents for very long, so like I could not imagine a small boat.
No. Yeah, they just love that life. And I was so fortunate to be able to grow up in nature and like slipping in and out of it. And at that time in the 70s in the Bahamas and Virgin Islands, there hadn't been a huge bacterial set in that killed a lot of stuff. So the water life was amazing. And I mean, I went to local schools. We lived in local communities. We dealt with racism, and I was so young, there was a lot of stuff that went way over my head, but yeah, it's like a pressure cooker being on a small place together. Yeah.
Okay, wait, just to be clear, because you brought up racism, you're white. Is somebody in your family any other ethnic background?
No, but when you live on the islands, it's not you're definitely a minority.
Okay.
And it's just I grew up in the situation where I was part of a 5 I only went to school for 3 years, but there was only 5% other kids than the people who grew up on the island and stuff, or 5% white as compared to 95% the other way. I was young, so I'm sure I was racist. I'm from Virginia. And I also experienced being a minority in my school for that tiny snapshot of time when I was young. I just think about it more these days because of how inequality is brought up a lot more, and we're asked to wrap our minds around things in a different way.
I just wanted to clarify it for the listeners because they can't see what you look like. So you were
Oh, yeah.
basically you were the minority in a community. So more it was a bit more sort of racism against you, even though you were the quote unquote sort of white privileged people, but not
Oh,
necessarily in
yeah.
that community.
Yeah, in that community. My dad had to go to prison because he was accused of stealing a boat that our friend and him, like, went to get one night, and so he had to go to prison for 6 months and be apart from the family. It's on his record. He can't go back into the it took it took the anyway, it's there's lots of interesting stories, and he had a lot of good stories from being in prison too and talking to people there. It was it is what it is.
It's your childhood. You don't know any different.
No,
I know.
that's for sure.
My father's a priest, well, minister. I don't even know how to say it right. Reverend. And people are always like, "Oh, what's it like being a minister's kid?" And I'm like, I don't know. That's the only life I know. Like, it's fine."
Exactly. You don't know any different, and everybody's looking at you like
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
waiting for the
Well,
horns to come out.
they came out, but yeah, they went away. They come out in times.
We all have hormones. We all go through rebellious phases, or maybe a certain percentage of us anyway. Yeah. But my dad's super good with wood and taking care of boats, and he really loved to be on the water and just loved that whole thing. I think my folks were really ballsy going on a boat. I found out later we had like secret compartments for guns. We might have sampled the 45 gallons of Crucian rum that were smuggled back under a tank underneath the stairs in the boat a lot when I was in high school.
It was really rum all you were smuggling?
I think so, yeah. Now my
Okay.
dad liked Crucian rum. He was part of he bought into like a store for boats, a marine store while we were in the Virgin Islands, and he got involved with business and did stuff there. And my mom ran a bareboat business, a diving business as well. So I started diving when I was 9 and certified when I was 10, and leading people on dives pretty much after that for the next, like, since I was 10 to I think 11, you know? pretty young, but it was super fun. Spent a lot of time in the water and underneath the water, night diving, and burst something in my head, whatever. Like, it was just great.
And then after that, you moved towards Washington, D.C.
Tappahannock, which is on the Rappahannock River. So it's south. If you go out towards the water from DC, it's on another little river south of the Potomac and a little Finger Lake area. That's a place that my family had gone to school in the male counterpart of that school. So I was there for 4 years, and then I went down to Florida to school in college and studied theater. I liked theater, writing, and art, and so I kept going with that there and sort of cut out writing and then cut out theater and just stayed with art. And then from there, I transferred to Rhode Island School of Design for painting. Although I knew I wanted to do sculpture, I did bronze casting, jewelry. I made some jewelry, pretty bad jewelry in Florida, did photography, painting, sculpture, and then wanted to get like a serious education. So I went to RISD because I knew I'd get some good connections or something. And I didn't like their sculpture department. There was like this funny time in the sculpture department where they didn't have a head. And so it like looked like RISD can look pretty cerebral anyway. And I dated some guy that was in the glass department. So somehow I got involved with glass. And I have a lot of issues that stem from being with my family so closely that disappeared when I started to work with glass. So I because glass needs a lot of concentration. So anybody who has PTSD, they can really bite into the complexity of handling, working with other people to make a piece of art. And the glass is so visceral that some people just have an instant connection. And I don't think it's a super smart connection because glass is super hard, but it's one where you certainly fall in love. And I did with glass. So that's where I started my romance with that material and education in it too. So yeah.
Well, that's one thing I noticed about it because I was watching, what is it, Blown Away on Netflix?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very entertaining, some magnificent creations being made there. But one of the thing that I noticed is like I'm a photographer, and for years I didn't understand how like I thought that artists were these solo people that stood in their studios and they pined away for days on end and did this thing by themselves. But I realized that glass blowing, it takes a minimum of two people to do pretty much anything, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's much more of a collaborative, communicative process to be able to do glassblowing because from what I understand, at a bare minimum, one person is sort of working on the molten glass while the other might be moving it or blowing it or doing something else with it to, I don't even know what, shape it, form it, whatever.
The usual Italian team is five people on a piazza. So the way that I learned with glass and that I adapted so well is that because I loved theater, like I don't like to be the actor because I don't like being looked at so much, but I do like being in the supporting role, which is funny, right? I don't know if you're an introvert extrovert, it's like you survive by people not seeing you when you're young. Then when people see you, it's not so positive for you, even though you think it might be. So I like the teamwork it took to make a production happen, and that you didn't have to be that person in front of the camera, in front of the crowd, but I liked being even part of the chorus. You're capable of feeling that incredible energy that all those people looking at you can give you. And you understand about it coming in and how actors can really like use that energy to create magic. And I know that that can happen. And I've been on stage and done it myself. So with glass blowing, it was like this synergy of like partnership, like I can work with people to do something which I know how to do and I feel safer in a group. And so I really like formed a bond with my working buddies in school to, I mean, I'm still friends with the surviving one now. We see each other every week, but yeah, as far as the drama and everything, the hosts of Blown Away, Catherine Gray was in graduate school when I was undergraduate. And so I'm very familiar with her, and I'm so happy that she's out there as an example of glass blowing or glass sculpture, not just glass blowing, although this centers on glass blowing. She's a sculptor that uses a lot of different materials, but she's so intelligent, and I'm happy that she's the one out there like helping to establish these boundaries for this reality show. So it's just interesting. It's interesting how it's changed the lives of my friends if they're on the reality show. And even if they don't win, the controversy has brought them so, especially now where people are stuck inside and virtual life is the only life to a certain extent because we can't give up our TVs. And a lot of us are stuck in places we didn't imagine we'd have to be in for so much time a day, you know. But it's all interesting. So RISD was great, and I got exposed to amazing, amazing glass workers. The heritage there is wonderful. I was working for my teacher, Michael Shiner. He would give me advice. So within my first year of working glass, I was assisting Dale Shahuli's team and Lena Talapietra at like a gig on the East Coast that they were doing. And being a woman in a male dominated field, there's a lot of stuff you have to wade through, and I just have to learn my lessons 3 times because I'm a little impaired when it comes to judgment sometimes. Yeah, but I battled my way through it because glass is so interesting. I freaking love it. It's like as a material, it can do so much, and you have to have so much control to be able to get what you want in a lot of ways. And I think when I was younger, I needed that to be in my life like that and to spend so many years learning how to be a good glass blower. When we were young, we imagined we would be the most successful glass person that we knew. And it's interesting when you go through life because the ideals that you set in your head at whatever age you're at, you still keep those ideals. They're part of you. It's not like you move past them. So I laugh a lot because he's like my friend. I can say like, "Oh, you know, like it's really hard for me to get over wanting to be you, even though my work is in some ways a lot different. We still revere the same virtuosity of the Italian glassmaking." But he's definitely an Italian guy, but not anyway. It's just funny the layers of life.
You said so many things there. I've got to come back to all this. Okay, so first of all, I want to understand. ha- I was actually the host of a television show about photography, a competition of photography, and I was always wondering how it affects people on sort of on the other side. So, like, how does it feel having an art form that a lot of people maybe just didn't understand or weren't necessarily sort of super interested in or engaged in suddenly be on the sort of the tip of everybody's tongue because of something like this popular TV show, Blown Away? Has it affected you? Have you seen any results of this or out the changes?
Definitely with my friends who've been on it, you know, the show grooms them, and in that, they tell them, you know, after you go through this, your social media is gonna explode, so you need to, and they kinda help them, like, clean up their websites, prepare things, prepare their minds because, I mean, I know that some people get, like, death threats because they've cut out a person's favorite person that was on there. You know, you have to steel yourself for the positive and negative. Yes, you'll get a lot of attention and but also as a woman, if you succeed at something, there's always a little friction about your success. So you have to be a little bit careful. But I think that as far as changing me, I can talk to people more about things. But you have to understand that they keep those people in a place where there's not very good assistance Like it's like a pressure cooker that they put these people in, and they're working with a finite amount of time. They're getting no rest. And it's like, that's not how you find out who's a good glassblower. That's how you make a good TV show. So, yeah, I mean, it's about glass blowing. That's great. And people understanding the heartbreaks, because there are a lot of heartbreaks, and it's very hard for people to make a living with glass because it's so darn expensive. But you get like, you fall in love with it, and that's a big thing, and I like that they show the passion of the people that are doing it instead of just focusing on, like, "Oh, there's that thing they made, it's so perfect and lovely," because with glassblowing, there with the male domination, there's also, like, a sportsmanship. Takes a lot of strength to do it, and I think that that kinda gets broken up in those because they have, like, a good gender balance, at least. I like how they follow the people and learn their stories. But it's like a weird slice of glass pie. It's not like any reality show. It's something under pressure or dramatic. It's glass isn't always about the drama. Like that's what you want to avoid is drama while you're working. Although some people are a little more prone to it than others. So
That's in every creative field. Actually, that's in every life. There's always the drama queens. But okay,
yes.
you brought up sort of like gender roles and how like glass blowing is male dominated and you are not male. Give me some more insight on that. Well, I just want to clarify. A, I'm male. B, I don't know anything about the glass blowing industry. Like about as much as I know is a few friends of mine over the years have played with it, but I don't act you're literally like the first glass blower or are you a glass blower even for that? Like what do you call yourself?
Well, I try for the sculptor thing
Okay.
because I have haven't been good at taking care of my body over the years, and you really need to be an athlete to get the longevity out of it, but it's because it's hard to stand on concrete and do a lot of lifted twisting and stuff that's one-sided. I became a yoga teacher in 2007 to try to help me balance out my skeleton, which bends a certain way now because everybody turns to the right to work when you're at the bench. And it's like, I'm going to be crippled for life later on. But I did love to be in the hot shop, but I can't carry as much weight. I'm not as strong as other people. My skeleton's not put together the best. So runs in my family, like a lot of dislocations and stuff like that. So, but I love glass. And with working in glass for so many years, I can now become the director of what's happening and I can get other people to do the hands on stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I miss it a lot. I don't blow that much and I have a hard time doing that every day now. But I used to do it 7 days a week for years. So
Okay. Well, I will try my best to remember to call you a glass sculptor instead of a glass blower.
Whatever, but I can blow glass, and with glass blowing, there's soft glass and hard glass. Hard glass is borosilicate, and you can think of that more as scientific glass making, Pyrex, or also you have to think that is also what pipe makers work with. So for the legalization of marijuana in America has kind of cracked open this glass rebel, and it's these people who make bongs and pipes and specifically like $200,000 pipes and stuff. That's been the hot trend in glass for the last 7 or 8 years. It has a lot to do with the money laundering and drugs and art. Art has always been used as money laundering, but also this outsider art that's grown. And I mean, you have to have good seals and good habits to be able to make bongs and things. So I've actually taken lessons to work with Boro, and I specifically love because I studied a little furniture design, this and that. So I like lathes. I wanted to learn how to use a glass lathe. I was in Michigan for a while, and Michigan, there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies. Over the years, they would have in-house scientific glass workers so that they could create all the stuff they needed in the lab, but they would job that stuff out more and more. That those people kind of band together now when they're older, and they teach these young pipe makers how to work the glass, because if you don't have good seals and scientific good habits, it won't work. So anyway, so there's that section of glass. But the male domination in the field, I mean, I think that just comes from Europe, and in particular Venice and Italy. In Europe, there's people from both genders that work glass, and in Italy too. But in traditionally on Murano, like women don't do that so much. So, and I had a Fulbright to be, I was in Italy for a year studying sculpture on Murano. And I had people look at my pictures and be like, you didn't make that. Like, and I just keep a low profile. And I've learned that over the years. It's like you have to prove yourself over and over in the glass world, because there's this team of people, they all want to work together. There's lots of testosterone out there, and as a woman it's like you don't have that endless amounts of testosterone, or you come from a family where you have high testosterone, you want to challenge and like be in the mix. A lot of people settle down into group workings because you want to get together with a group of people and they know what you want to do, and you guys make that choreography to make your artwork, you get it down, you want to work with them forever because that team's working good, right? So a lot of teams work that way. Or you lose a member to go do something, you bring somebody else in. Chihuly Inc. is a factory. They work with a lot of different teams. But if you want to be a successful artist, it's good to have, like, so a lot of people marry their teammate. A lot of people just have a good friendship and come to work with those people. You have your own studio, so you invite people in, you maintain that progress forward, and men are more comfortable with men in a lot of those situations. So it's hard to break in as a woman, I think. There weren't a lot of people who did that before, but they don't really stay as contributing members of that glass blowing world forever.
Okay. So I understand how that could be an issue in the, what's it called? Foundry, forgery. What's the right word for the, like,
Oh, like in the hot shop.
in the hot shop? Okay. I understand how that could be an issue in the hot shop. Now, but I also want to know beyond that. So, like, when you go to, let's see, a gallery or to have an exhibition or to meet a collector or a curator or anything like this, does gender play a role at that point of the industry?
The gallery owners that gave me opportunities the most were women. I'm single, I've never been married. I went through boyfriends, but sometimes gallery owners would see that as a danger, because you could decide to have children and you would stop making work. So why invest in an artist that's going to do that? I had that explained to me by gallery owners and their employees as well. And so it's like, when there's an old school thought, it's you get a thought in your head, you learn something, you have an ideal when you're young. It's hard to erase that in a lot of ways, like racism, hard to erase beliefs that we've held for our whole lives or whatever. Systems, supporting systems. And then, yeah, just getting along, like what's considered getting along? How much can you show of your real self in a situation? Like that's why you're friends with the people you cut your teeth with sometimes, because they really know who you are. And I think because I suffer from PTSD, it makes it harder for me to get along with people when it's an abusive situation. And a lot of the European way of teaching and the way I was taught is like you get yelled at to be taught. And that doesn't, but as a teacher, I use that same method, even though it doesn't work for me, because that's what I was taught. And I never went to school when there was sensitivity training, like when I was in grade school, when I was in kindergarten. No one ever talked about anybody else's emotions. And so a lot of I'm only 52, okay, but I really feel like my communication skills and the way people are taught to communicate now, it's like something you really have, a vocabulary you have to really bite into to be able to survive. Even I'm a workshop teacher more than I am a university teacher, although I have done that for a semester. Even in workshops, the it's just a bit of a minefield for an I don't want to call myself old, but someone who's learned a totally different way of working to be very considerate and loving, although I try to be compassionate and kind in my daily life to a high degree because I am sensitive myself. But I can also pull over my cloak of fuck you because you need it when you're with a bunch of guys who are all worked up about something. Like I grew up with very few female cousins or siblings, so I was used to that kind of fight.
Okay, wait. I'm gonna clarify that, or I'll expand on that. I was teaching in the United Arab Emirates as a white American man. I was teaching Muslim women art at the university level. I had to put on a facade for that because a classroom of 20 women is as difficult, I would imagine, as a group of unruly men towards a woman as well. So I understand that issue. Like for many years, I took on the sort of the persona of like, well, I don't want to say arrogant, but like sort of like the teacherly way, like I did the Socratic method kind of an idea where I tried to push them to figure out the answers. Like I hate teachers that spoon feed and coddle students. I think that's a waste of an education time, but that's just my personal opinion. I never yelled though. That's because I worked for like government universities. If I guess if I was workshops, I might have yelled. That would have been kind of fun. But I'm interested in the fact that you run workshops because for years people have always been like, "Hey Matt, when are you going to run a workshop? I'd love to take a workshop with you." And I'm like, I don't want to do fucking workshops. I mean, don't get me wrong, love the idea of running workshops. The act of running a workshop, magnificent. What I don't like about it is the marketing, the public relations, the all the other things that basically that you have to attract. It's not only do you have to be skilled and talented in your medium, then you have to be a skilled and talented teacher, and then on top of that, you have to be a skilled and talented marketing, public relations person, good coordination, good business skills, all these other things, and that just seems like too much for me.
I have to say in response to that, that when I teach, it's at an educational play like works with craft, it's taught a lot workshops in the summertime. So you have Penland or Haystack or Pilchuck ask you to teach, and they take care of all the other stuff. I mean, more and more you have to do the publicity to draw people in, but they take care of all that for you because as an artist, you that's an issue for artists. Don't bother doing that. I do have friends that do that so that they get all the money, but they do it on a smaller scale, and they are, like, some of the best glass blowers in the world. So, you can organize that yourself or your wife organizes it for you, actually, is more like it. But usually you let the institution take the brunt of that.
Well, and I've always wondered that. Okay, so like if you do it on your own and you keep 100% of the revenues from the workshop versus let's say going working with a institution and the institution, I don't know, theoretically, I've never done one. So theoretically what, they take 50%?
No talk of that. They just pay you a certain amount.
Oh, okay.
They don't talk about how much money they get, 'cause they have to run the facility, and sometimes they're not dimensional, multimedia teaching facility and stuff, so all the money maybe doesn't go equally depending on because you probably have a teaching fee, and then you have a studio fee, like like a metals or glass or paper, everything costs different, and, they have their systems for figuring things out.
Right, but I'm wondering like down the end of it. So like because like okay, so let's say you freelance and do your own workshops and you get to keep 100% of all the income. Do you earn in the end, sort of like, do you earn more money even though you might have less students than if you work with an institution that gives you a flat fee?
It depends on your shop and how many people you can fit into your shop. So, my friends, they have a smaller shop, So they would just have like 4 students tops. But then I have friends who have built bigger shops thinking they can run private classes, so they would have, but schools, they only have 3 stations or 4 stations to work on, or 7 stations in different areas, so not all of them are on the same. So a lot of classes are orientated around how much time can be given, because it's so expensive to heat the glass and melt the glass, and so it's all about, like, getting the maximum amount of time to each person and fair to the teaching assistants who don't get paid anything really, and how to take care of everyone in the class. A lot of it's like that's up to the teacher. But yeah, I don't know if I answered anything.
Not really. Not, or you didn't answer my question. You answered a different question, so that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not super linear going through a cleanse, although I'm not in the strong part right now. I backed out of it a bunch, so I wouldn't be too
A cleanse. You mean like
unmired from reality. But just it's a restricted eating, like no sugar, no alcohol, no wheat, no dairy, no, yeah, there's,
God, what do you eat? Like that sounds like my whole diet.
oh, lots of greens, and make your own food and not get processed food too much, and then you can go meatless for a while, and you can go like not solid for a while too, and just taking the end of 2020 and squeezing all the frustrations out for a little while.
It's a bit, yeah. So okay, so in relevance to the quarantines and all that. So now wait, you're in Washington, right?
Yes.
Washington State, just to be clear on that.
Yes, Seattle, Washington State, Pacific Northwest, and so I can look down onto the Puget Sound from where I live right now. Luckily, I bought a house December 31st, 2020, and moved out of my studio, which was fine, but it was next to the baseball and football places of worship, and has become more and more isolated and funky, and we have a large homeless population in Seattle. And no, I bought a house, and I've been working through trying to renovate during quarantine, and get my studio up and running, squeeze 3,000 square feet worth of stuff into 1,500 square feet. It's kind of like a sausage process, but it's been really good, and I have a garden, which makes everything so wonderful.
All right, let's move on to some other sort of more artistic, creative topics. First of all, I want to just jump back to a thing. Bongs. Do you make them?
No,
Okay, great. Moving on. Next topic.
they're tough. I'll tell you, the last time I tried to make one was in art school, and just when we were putting the spout on, a 6th grade class came to visit and watched us do it, and after it's, like, tough to make it right, okay, and it's not the right kind of glass. Our soft glass won't take heat like the hard glass does, so I did not go down that route because 'cause I'm trained at Rhode Island School of Design and stuff, although I have friends that make bongs for Barney's, and they went to RISD.
I knew of a lady glass blower who made glass dildos. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. Whatever works for you.
Oh, yeah. I got friends from RISD who do that too. I listened to Italian masters tell me stories about how when they were kids, they made hollow and Murano for the ladies, so you can put the warm water in it,
Nice. Okay.
which is funny. But that's a time-honored glass use.
Absolutely. I'm all, yeah, I support it 100%. Okay. I work on paper, so and I'm always bitching about how I never have enough space or ability to store my work well. I am utterly fascinated. How do you store glass other than very carefully?
We had a big earthquake here in 2001. I was in grad school or in Italy at that time. And many of my friends who have beautiful studios and had all their work out lost a lot of their work. I have made some larger installation pieces starting back to 1995. I have been storing crates, giant crates for years. Okay, you know, decades. So that's almost 3 decades in, like, 3 years, 4 years, it'll be 3 decades. I've been storing huge crates. So you put your glass in a safe thing. So you got your double-walled cardboard, and then you've got foam, or if you're shipping, you've got to double box it as well. My work, I think a lot now of, well, that's not true. Yeah, and in the last 10 years or so, I've been, or 15, making larger scale work means you have to have a crate for it to go in, and then you stack in crates, and oh, it becomes a little bit crazy, and it's difficult to take care of all that stuff. So you have to go through it and make decisions about what to keep and what to smash because you can't afford to store it all. And if you're an artist, you're a pack rat, that's a problem too. So you have to have a lot of square footage. So living in the center of Seattle right now is not the smart idea. Where I live now, I have basically 1,500 square feet for myself and my studio and my business. So I have a 300 square foot storage space that is, because I started moving after COVID started, I couldn't get rid of a lot of stuff. So my storage space is full of books and clothes because I still haven't gotten to them to get rid of them because it was really scary in the beginning, COVID. So you didn't know what you could do. Now Goodwill is open and accepting things, and so it's better. But as an artist, you do have to think about your babies. Like, I have no fruits of my body babies, but I do have lots of sculpture babies. And, that's why a lot of people get a container and put it on their property. But I don't have a big property, but I'm planning to build more storage containers outside to put stuff in. I have so much packing material. And yeah, so if you have paper, I finally did get a file drawer for all my drawings, and I've done printmaking too, digital printmaking, super fun, and my projects and my maps of pieces, and it just felt like I finally arrived to get a file cabinet for my drawings.
I'm bitterly envious of you. I still don't have a filing cabinet. I want one. Well, sadly, actually, a filing cabinet won't work because some of my work is twice the size of a filing cabinet. It's
Right.
quite large.
Yeah.
So, but some of it will. There are filing cabinets that exist that can fit most of my work, but some won't fit.
And then there goes another issue too, because the way that when you become an artist or you start identifying as an artist, you start getting ideas about where your life should be at different time periods, which you're laughing at. And I know it's like we thought we'd be here, here, and here. And like, well, I'm still preparing for the retrospective. So I'm keeping all of my, you have to winnow down how much stuff you keep about yourself. And I'm not good at banging my own drum, but it's like I've got boxes of invitations and different things that who the hell cares about? But just in case the Renwick needs it, which is a high craft library.
But it's interesting you say that because previously on the podcast I had a guest who did legacy planning. Like that was her career to help artists plan their legacy. And from our conversation, I was just like, "Fuck, man! I actually have to keep more stuff because like I've gotten rid of too much." But like, it's really made me think a little bit more about like at least keeping the best of around, even if I just put it in storage and don't look at it for decades, but I don't want to get rid of it because it was a very interesting concept that she talked about, which is as living, practicing artists, it's our job to keep all of our stuff. So whether these are like journals or sketches or whatever, it doesn't even mean the finished piece because those things in a best case scenario, if the legacy plan goes well, will end up in a library or a museum's collection, which will then make it so that future scholars will be able to do more research on you and your place in the canon But if none of that exists, future scholars can't research you, so therefore you won't be placed into the canon. So, like, the way to be part of sort of art history is to basically create a set of material objects that can be passed on for future scholars, and I love that idea.
Well, I have to think that the first artist that made me really think about things was Robert Mapplethorpe. I went to see a show of his with some friends of mine who love him so much at the Getty in LA, like the new and improved. I went in 2000. It looks so different than even a few years ago. But in reading about different stages of his life as an artist, like his lover was wealthy and his lover passed before he did. So Robert Mapplethorpe was able to create an entity that took care of his artwork after his death with this money. So when I go places, I can see Robert Mapplethorpe's work because there's a foundation that takes care of this work and sends it out when it's right. So like, oh my gosh, how can I in my family, like, I have no offspring, so my art's my offspring. Do I isolate my money from going back into my family at my death and, purchase enough land that I can afford a foundation that I can have my work taken care of so that it has a voice posthumously, and people because I don't talk about a lot of my how my life fits into my work completely. I was told never to talk about weakness, especially with your artist statement. You don't talk about weakness, so there's like a whole it was, like you want to go with strong things, not like it's interesting, like the kind of indoctrination that you get. And for me, I think a lot of my stuff is personal, it'll take me a long time to untangle myself enough to be able to really talk about it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how I mature as an artist and how my communication skills ramp up. But sorry I meandered. Getting back to Maplethorpe, I really got to see that if you want to have a lasting effect in your craft or in your, that making sure your work doesn't just crumble into nothingness like I have seen happen to my friends who are geniuses and pass away. Like their family doesn't know what to do, and then the work gets lost. And it's like, no, 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 no. I keep every sketchbook, I keep all the announcements, I keep all my acceptance letters, I keep all my rejection letters, all that stuff can't be thrown away. And I feel like I'm dragging it around to some degree, but I'm also like, this is my way to the future. I send my catalogs each time I make them or they're made to the Corning Museum of Glass. They have a fantastic library there. Also in Venice, there's a new foundation there that is started by collectors in Switzerland, and they are accepting masters papers, like a glass master's papers and designers papers, usually not the famous glass, usually as a designer and a master. So the designers are focused on more, but to receive a family's papers, that's like huge. But they are trusting it to this foundation because it's not run by Italians, and that they will take care of this legacy because Venice has a huge legacy in glass.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I prior to discussing this with this previous guest, I had never it was Amy Pottsick was the lady that did it as the legacy planner. I had never thought of that, or, like, I guess I would have assumed that somebody else would just sort of take control over these things, and I didn't realize how much of an active role as a living artist that I need to take in that legacy, for lack of a better word.
Legacy planning, they call it for
I
artists.
love it. I'm all for it, and I'm even doing stupid things like with the podcast. I now have a book, and like I write my notes in the same book, and like in the book, I put the name of the guest, and I put the date that I do the conversation, so that like they can see all my notes. Later on, even if we didn't get to talk about the topic, I had the note that I wanted to talk about a topic. I mean, I'm getting a kind of OCD about it. It's kind of weird. I shouldn't be doing that, but anyways.
COVID, COVID,
No,
fine.
no. It's so funny. Everybody keeps talking about like, "Oh, COVID affected this, infected that, and all that." I'm like, "You know what? I'm an
Biggest.
artist. Like, I've always been a recluse, and so, like, COVID just means you all are now living my lifestyle. Like, I've always been like this. Like, nothing's changed for me.
Yes.
The only difference is I'm not going to art openings. That's about it. Other than that, I'm pretty much living the same life I lived before COVID." But as I said, that's my sad story. So, you mentioned at your house, you said that you have your living space, you have your studio, and your business. Is your business selling and whatever, exhibiting your artwork, or do you have another business?
Yeah, it's just making art, my art making business. It's through taxes and understanding how to separate my life, that part is part of me. So my garage is not for cars, it's for my kilns and things. I'm used to living in my own studio, so like I have altered my living room and I had an extra bedroom. I took down the wall, separating it from the hallway. I put up plywood walls there. I put plywood walls up in my living room and I would prefer like I like big open spaces so I can have different projects. With the PTSD comes the OCD tendencies. I also have a really hard time staying in a linear line. So if I get frustrated with one thing, I want to have another thing right there to work on. So I like having 5 projects out and being able to ping pong in between things really helps to allow my creativity to flow better. So, but it means I don't get a living space as much, but with my purchase of the house, it was a little bigger than I could afford, so I turned my basement into an apartment, and I'm currently renting that out, although I don't know how much longer that will happen, and because COVID is so pernicious and the air system is shared, I'll probably just this is a big leap to, like, cross my fingers and say, "Okay, I'll just pay for the whole thing," but I've been investing in the last 5, 6, 7 years with making larger scale work of a higher price point because to survive through hard times, you have to having different price points in your work means you don't put all your eggs in the same basket. I'm a bit of a nervous Nelly in that regard. With wanting to do 5 or 6 different series, it helps if I'm working on a piece for 300 hours, if I have a piece I can work on for 20 hours, and then another piece that I can work on for 2 hours. So I feel like I'm making progress somewhere with jewelry, making progress somewhere with finishing a small piece, making progress with the big piece over a larger amount of time. Yes, it just works better for me.
It sounds like an incredibly logical business plan. It makes complete sense. I mean, I noticed, okay, so on your website, which I will link to in the show notes, that you have 5 galleries that sell your work. So, like, but you make everything from jewelry to large scale installations. Like, how do you manage, like, basically what I'm getting at is, like, you don't seem to be selling through your own website, or basically you're on your own, you sell through a gallery or some sort of a other business. Um, how do you manage to sort of, I don't know, cobble together a living out of that?
Well, I do have a website to sell from, but that is called KateRhoadsDesign.com because it's for smaller pieces and it's part of a larger plan. So it's not, I'm the idea in the last 10 years or 20 years is that, oh, if you make high priced art, people don't want to see that you make lower priced art. When I have visitors to my studio and I have my jewelry out and my art out, I have Usually men ask me like, "Why do you have that stuff out there? It cheapens your work." And I said, "Well, you're not a woman, so women wear art." I made my small pieces. I've always made jewelry, but when I started making my large scale pieces, people couldn't afford them, but they loved them. So I started making things that had lower price points so that people could still get something that would remind them of that big piece that they loved, because that's how my brain works. And I enjoy being able, yeah. So it's a lot of, I spend a lot of time on my work. Some pieces I want to spend less time, some pieces more time. The price is different accordingly. And these days, I've been told that it's better to link my shop to my website because we're so virtual. We want to see what everybody can do now all in one thing. And so I'm cooking up what I need to do. And then I'm going to talk to my web designer, who's my friend, and we're going to be changing things. But it's like I dropped my blog. I used to do a blog because that was really popular back in the day. Now I don't do it anymore. We still have to get rid of those links on the website. There's always something to clean up. If I can add and subtract myself, I can have some fun. But if I need someone else to do it, I usually wait a longer time and then do that and pay for it at the same time. But
We all do that. Yeah. But okay, so okay, something I'm interested in though. Okay, so you make large scale expensive work, you make small scale jewelry, which I have to admit, looking at them, they're not that cheap. I mean, I understand they're on the lower price point, but they're definitely not cheap. So
well,
they're
yeah.
not. It's just a fact. It's
No, there's a good reason for that.
because yeah, I mean,
It takes a long time. It's a specialized thing. I have specialized
I am
tools.
not questioning
Every
your
time you
prices.
touch the glass, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, but it is like if I make something for $120, that's a much different than making something for $65,000,
Right, which
so
is what I'm trying to get to here. Okay, so over the course of your let's say a year in your business, like what percentage of your sales is the large scale and what percentage is small scale? And then I'm assuming there's maybe a mid-range set of works that you also do. So like somewhere in the middle, like basically like is 50% small scale as far as your income and then like 25 and 25 for the really, large scale and mid range, like so like how basically like how much are people buying the different ranges?
I'm just gonna pull up my profit and loss standard for last year.
That's amazing, but you don't need to
Last
be that
last
specific.
fiscal year. Well, I mean, because I can't, every year is different. And what's good for me is if I can sell a large piece, I don't really make much money. So, but I would say, so jewelry last year I made close to 4,000.
Yeah.
Sales for sculpture more like 40,000.
Okay, now wait, is that like mid-range sculptures or large sculptures or same lumped together as one?
Let's see. 9,000. So one of them is if I can sell my work myself, I can keep 100%.
Sure.
If I sell through a gallery, I only get 50%.
Such is the system, yes.
Such is the system. So, like last year, I had a sale for a mid-sized wall piece. So that was a $40,000 sale. I get $20,000 for that. So out of that 40,000, 20,000 was from a large scale piece. Like 9,000 was from a vessel, which is kind of a big vessel. And then, the 4,000s for jewelry. And I had a moving sale. So there's some pieces, some vessels and smaller stuff that I sold. So nothing like that big, really. In-state retail, less than 2,000. It just depends. Like and some galleries are good at selling some things for a while, and then they get a different owner, and then they're no good at that anymore. Or you're trying a new gallery, or you're
But wait, hold on.
now everybody.
I was fascinated. You just said in-state sales was you said 0, is that right?
Oh, in-state sales, it's like maybe 2,000 for vessels and larger pieces, or 4,000 I sell stuff in Europe too, so I've been trying to focus a little bit on the European market because I like the idea of being internationally renowned, and I was worried I'd have to leave the country at a certain point, so I wanted to start expanding my range and just to make it a softer landing in case I had to go.
No, the reason why I ask about that though is because I've sort of learned this thing over a series of my own life mistakes and career mistakes that I've made, which is that I in the beginning I thought, where you live should be where your collector base and your exhibiting base and all this kind of stuff was. And I have over the course of my career, I've realized where you live has almost nothing to do with who buys your work or where they buy your work. Like most of my collectors are in Chicago, Illinois, New York City, Germany, and France, and I have lived in none of those four places ever in my life.
Yes, a lot of my sculpture ends up in Florida. My sense and I do a lot of big seaweed, which isn't like a giant thing in Florida, but the fluidity of my work, people who love the sun and light and color and being close to beautiful places tend to have the money to and wanna put the work there. I Pacific Northwest, I'm way better I used to be way better sales in New York. Then because I'm classically trained from RISD, I think that's the European flavor of my education, and so in the Pacific Northwest where I live, it's like wild, wild west as far as the art history for this area. It's difficult in the glass community if you don't fit into the good old boy system, sometimes you're left on your own. Like, I'm not married into the good old boy system, so and I suffer from memory issues, so I don't remember people's names very well, and
Matt,
that is
my name
a
is Matt.
yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Matt. I It's good. Name tags are good for the first couple days. Just joking, workshop talk, but and I think that makes it harder for me to remember the people that have bought my work. I remember how people make me feel, not how they look or their names, and so it's better if a gallery can do the talking for me, but slowly, like, I just try to keep integrity in what I do and how I treat people and how I treat clients, and it's very difficult to do in the art world because once you get involved with a gallery, like, they should have a part of you, but I broke away from my gallery, like, 7 years ago because I felt they didn't give a crap about me, and because how many hundreds of artists do you have to and unless you're somebody who really sells things yourself or your work sells really well, then it's hard to get attention from a gallery. So I didn't feel like they were supporting me, so I had to do my own thing, which I don't know how smart that is, but so I try to have my space for people to come and look at work. I have galleries come through that represent me. Like you said, I have 5 galleries. I mean, now it's a virtual world, giving virtual tours and but I'm so lucky, I think, because I have a few years before we'll actually start coming into each other's houses again, I think. And I need that time to slowly turn this house into a functioning workspace where I have dirty space, I have office space, I have jewelry space, I have space for other things, I have workspace we can transform. And it's not exactly what I want, but I love improving the garden and improving the way things look and bringing it up to a vision and who knows, then maybe I'll move on somewhere else that's better and further away, or I don't
Oh yeah,
know.
I'm looking forward to buying a plot of land outside the city and building some like big place with multiple barns for my wife and I to have in different locations and stuff. Like it'll be great fun. But
Oh, yes.
okay, you mentioned earlier and you sort of brought it up again, career goals changing over the course of our lives. So like I remember being a kid and my goal was to have a retrospective at the Guggenheim. That was my by the
Mm,
age of
mhm.
50. That I was planning on it at the age of 50. My friend Billy, who was my childhood friend, he was working in film at the time, and so he was going to make a documentary about me that was also going to be on exhibit at the same time, because we've known each other since we were like 2 years old. So he would be able to, create a great documentary. Needless to say, I'm 3 years away from 50, and I am nowhere near a Guggenheim retrospective. And of course, Billy is also not working in film anymore. So that whole goal is sort of shot to hell. So, like, how did you, so and of course, mine was also like to be a superstar. Like, you wanted to be like the pinnacle of a movement, and you wanted to be the representation of a time period, and all this kind of stuff. And you wanted to all this kind of crap. And now I'm like, no, I just want to make enough money to continue to do what I want to do, and I'll be perfectly happy. How have your goals changed?
I remember making a choice when I did college for 8 straight years after high school. So I remember in my first college thinking I should leave here and go and do art because I meant to do that. And then I thought, I'll just stay here with my friends and like finish this passage of life with them. And then I'll go on to do my art. And, this is what I want to be, this painter. Or, I was in Florida dreaming dreams at a mediocre liberal arts school. And then when I went to RISD, I looked at my choices. I dated some glassblower. Oh, I should tell my friend Thurman Statham how he changed my life. And I thought to myself, glass is very rarefied and small as an art medium. And when I look at painting, painting is so big. Like, what do you want to do, Kate? Do you want to be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond? And I don't know if that affected my choice, but it has. And I think I was in love with glass. It was just going to happen. So, yeah, I went with the glass. And in the business, longevity secures you a place. I think I'm always bewildered that I'm included with some of my peers and some of the people that I worked for and respected so much when I moved to town. I feel very fortunate to be able to show work with them and to be in this group of artists that work with glass that have accolades from this part of the country. As an artist, you know that the way you feel about yourself and your position in the art world changes monthly. Like, as a woman growing up in a patriarchal system, as I get older, it's really harder for me to hold on to the idea that I'm this incredible artist. Nobody else thinks like me. Like, it's just harder and harder to hold a crisp artist ego together, And I think that's good for me. And learn humility, and I see if you can't keep that artist persona together, you can disappear very easily, and you have to be drawn towards the light to a certain extent. I'm very competitive, and I feel that way about being chosen or successful, but yet I'm passed up a lot for things that I think are successful. And then I go into my studio and I take these slices of glass and I put them in my kiln, and I take them out of my kiln and I wash them, and I think, oh my God, at least I've done one thing to move my life forward that feels good. I've like made these things beautiful, and now I put them in a jar and I put them on the shelf, and there they are. And it's about creating beauty, I think, in my life that makes me happy. Harmony and beauty. I feel so much that life is hard for me to understand and to move through in a successful a pattern. Or like, I see my guy friends and they like, oh, get a girlfriend and they're in love and they have a family and they're an artist, and it just doesn't seem to be for women, there's this, it's not the same kind of path. So I don't know. I try to follow my curiosity as a person. I volunteer a lot at the Seattle Aquarium, or I used to. I look at plankton. I talk about the science of the ocean, how important algae is and seaweed. My life has flowed in different areas in different ways, and you can't help that happens to you. And I think it's finding happiness becomes more important to me in my work and outside of my work, because I think sometimes I am good at slogging through things, or glass people are masochistic. So it's like I put myself in a position. You are who you are. You find out through your friendships. You put yourself in a position where you are overextended, or you put yourself in a position where you can focus on yourself. And again, in the patriarchy, women are not taught to focus on themselves. So it's like bringing yourself back to that navel gazing to make work and to communicate whatever emotional thing I'm trying to communicate at the time. I think it's a good reason to keep going. And as an artist, you just have to allow your vision of who you think you're going to be in the 20s with who you are, who you've become, what you've gravitated towards in your life. And, sometimes I've been very fortunate through my family's support. I can keep sleeping in a bed, and I can still follow my dreams artistically to a certain extent. So take I don't take risks as much as I used to, because once you have a good thing, that you keep going at it. So you see a lot of glass blowers, once they've developed that thing that they do, then they do that thing for a long time, because gosh, it took so long to learn how to do that, and a lot of R&D and development, and you add new things into your repertoire slowly, you experiment, you test it out. You try not to like spend $20,000 on one thing at the same time, and then it being 2008, and then you're in debt for 10 years. You try not to do those things, but sometimes you don't know what's happening. So as you get older, you try to be savvy and back yourself up. I guess that's why I have like the different objects that I make at different price points, like whatever thing screams at me at the time that's going to help support me and keep me following my life's path. I want to do that, but learning how to reach out for the things that you don't have in your life, or the things you're not good at, to help you to get to your further dreams. That's something that I think happens over time. You really have to be open to people helping you, because as an artist, you can't pay people to do stuff so easily. There's so much to learn out there right now about how to survive and how to communicate and how to have the right website, and how, well, you can't put shipping on it anymore. Shipping has to be included. So you have to raise your price. You got to tell everybody about it. There's a lot of communication that goes on with creating uh, identity as an artist, and as a artist that sells their own work, to create faith in that from collectors, that you have integrity and that you'll do the right thing. I think it just takes a lot of determination and commitment.
Indeed. All right. I got two last questions. Sort of wrap this up here. First one would be, do you have the names of three other creative people that somehow you think are worthy of a little bit more attention?
Boyd Sagiki, he's currently teaching in Japan right now, but he's one of my best friends, and he's a very polite Hawaiian man who does not bang his own drum, but he is one of the finest glassblowers out there, and his design ability is like banging. So him and his wife Lisa Zerkowitz have the design line Two Tone. So you can find. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna muck that up, aren't I? Should I look it up so I'm gonna say the right thing this
Sure, you're
time?
welcome to look it up. I will put links to all these people if I can find them online.
Two Tone Studios is their name. Another unsung person that, let's see. It's like I want to, he's male, so I'll say female. And my friend Jennifer Caldwell, we talk a lot. She's a shy person too. So it's like this difficulty with putting yourself out there. So if you're a shy person,
The irony of a shy person that you talk to a lot, but it's okay.
Well, no, we don't talk a ton, but you learn in the glass community who you trust and who you don't trust because you learn that. So then the ones who you do trust, you trust. And we survive by sharing information. Oh, this vendor's not working anymore. That person's not trustworthy. We have to like know what's happening in our community. So you get your people who have the finger on the pulse, and then you share your information with them, and then everybody tries to help each other out. As far as like we're talking about, yeah, I'm not part of the good old boy club, but I am part of the, I would say, good old girl club, good old girl club. There is a glass good old girl
The
club.
New Girl Club.
It's yeah, the new girl club. There's not a ton of members at my age bracket, but there's a fair amount. And I think we've learned here to be generous with our information with each other, because the more you hold in and try to keep secret, the more you stifle as well. Like you have to think of it like a tree. A tree branches get so, I have to do a lot of pruning coming up. You need to let the light in, you need to let air come past. And being in an educational system as an artist, you're so fortunate to have the sounding box of your peers and your teachers. But in real life, you have to make that for yourself. You have to choose those people from your medium, or the people that you really, really respond to, and you need to make them part of your community. I've been Kiki Smith's TA. I've been to her place. She knows me by name. Like, there's people out there that you can rely on. You just have to believe in yourself. And I know it's hard to do through a lot of distractions these days, but yeah.
Okay. Do you have a third artist?
So there's two. Who's an unsung artist? It's like all my besties, but I'm trying to think of
I feel bad calling
another
it
female.
unsung artist, but like an artist that you wish the public would notice more.
And then there's Karen Willenbrink Johnson. She's just got a huge soul, and she's an amazing, amazing teacher and wonderful person. And for so many people who their life's work and happiness is being in the hot shop, I feel so bad for these days. Like she really shines in that regard, and her technical abilities are like no other. I have friends that are definitely sung, so that's for sure.
But they've already got the attention. I don't need to give them more attention.
Well, and some are good at accepting the attention and using it to further their career, and some aren't, just aren't. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Last little bit is I always ask for, you've already given a lot of advice, but I generally sort of end it with asking for advice as well. So any advice you have not given yet that you think that maybe the next generation or somebody that wants to follow in your footsteps might benefit from?
Of course, I have to say that stubbornness is a virtue to a certain extent. If you have a vision in your head of how you think your art should be, it's always good to work to get that out there. Please don't take one person's opinion to the moon. You really need to listen to your gut and yourself. Of course, if someone is more educated, you try to go down that pathway with what they're saying to understand what they're saying, but you don't need to adopt that as your motto or creed for the rest of your life. Making art is supposed to be a happy thing. Don't let it be something that rules your life in a negative way, because the whole concept of the artist in the ivory tower suffering for their art is not a healthy one. And you can see social media has changed that for so many people. So now it's a healthy blend of what you show and what you don't, and keeping some things private for yourself, I guess. That would be, and to love yourself and take care of yourself. Like that's the most important thing, is to not sacrifice so much for your art that you don't have anything left for you. And good luck with that if you really love what you do.
Marvelous. Thank you very much for your time.
Matt, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much, and keep the East Coast vibe going on wherever you are. Like, I'm just talking about our background, common background with spending some time in the same area of DC, Arlington, and there's a lot of '80s stuff for sure. Watching Life of Brian for the first time, watching, like, so many being super into what was it, Phil Collins, but he was still in the band. Genesis was huge, and
Mhm.
it was a great time
Yeah,
of my life, very confused. I think most of my life's been pretty confusing,
yeah,
so
it's all of
I
our
just try
life.
to ride with it these
Yeah.
days.
My dad showed me Life of Brian for the first time, so that tells you about my family.
Well, what an amazing film, and in the '80s with, Monty Python, I would have to go watch bootleg copies of it at my, like, Latin teacher's house. Sometimes he would I mean, it wasn't what you wanted your kids to see.
Oh, no. Okay, wait. My Latin teacher in high school, Mr. Bell, I can say this because unfortunately he's passed away, so I can tell this story now. He actually was a monk, and he was kicked out of the monastery because he was also an alcoholic, and he ended up coming and teaching high at the public high school,
And being a high school
a
teacher.
Latin high school teacher, and on his desk, he had this little monk doll. Like, it was no big deal, just like a little monk on his desk. Great.
Full of alcohol, right?
No,
Full of alcohol.
even better. You push the head down on the monk, and a big penis came out from between the robes.
Of course, and he had that in the
Had it in the
classroom.
classroom
Yes.
for decades, and none of the administration ever could figure it out, but all the students knew. It was classic.
Did he ever do it in front of the class, or was it just the rumor?
Oh, no, he
Or people would do it?
people would do it, and he'd be like, "Stop doing that. Somebody'll see."
I had an Episcopalian priest who was female in my high school, and she's gay. She came out as gay, and she's a bishop. She's turning into a bishop now, but she was amazing. I loved theology. I thought it was so interesting, and then I like studied the Quran in my school to understand other theology and had like all these like come back to Christianity. There's hope for you. I'm like, "What? I just studied it. What?"
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know.
that's the
Virginia.
word theology means just studying of religions. It doesn't mean you have a belief in any particular, it just means studying something, all theologies. Like, yeah, my father has his doctorate in theology, even though he's actually an Episcopal reverend.
Oh, Episcopal. Wow, man. My school, I went to chapel 6 days a week. We had Saturday off and Sunday was church for realsies.
Yeah. Oh,
Ooh, but I was always even in St. Thomas, I was at an Episcopalian school where they would chastise us for effing around in chapel and
oh
stuff,
no,
and
my dad was not that priest. I promise. My dad was the cool one. He was so much like, I went to him when I was having a problem with like cocaine, and I said, "Dad, I need you to get me into rehab." And he said, and he just turned to me in a nutshell. He basically just turned and said, "Tough shit. You got yourself into it. You get yourself out." And I'm like,
wow,
"Wow,
wow, well,
like tough
mm,
love."
understanding, Dad,
Well,
thanks.
I mean, it's a longer story, but I mean, he was understanding, and he was doing his version of tough love to sort of say, "I have faith in you to correct, self-correct your own life. You've made some mistakes, but now that you are aware of the mistakes you've made, you can correct for them." And so, in the end, it was the thing that motivated me to finally quit. So, I mean, good for him. He knew how to manipulate me.
Well, my stepbrother is addicted to cocaine, and he's been in and out of prison, in and out of rehab. Last couple of years, he had open heart surgery and he lost his foot, because of diabetes setting in. And it's like he still won't quit
Oh,
it.
no, I quit
So,
21 years ago now, so.
see, no, you like it worked for you, but sometimes it's a harder road for some.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how I did it. I even did it cold turkey, no Narcotics Anonymous, no nothing. I just locked myself in my house for 3 months, cut all ties to my old friends and my old job, and then got a new job and moved away. That's it. Like, and
Well, it's hard when all your friends are doing
Oh
it,
yeah.
and I was in Florida in the '80s, so that was part of my repertoire. Like, I went to college at 17, I learned a lot about drugs and alcohol, hallucinogens, things like that, big party school, and, like, I learned that I had to leave that behind in my life because it was great and I liked it, but the results weren't good. The results really weren't good, so
Ironically, the year that I was doing heroin was the only year in my entire collegiate career that I got straight A's.
yeah, my friend and I, we would not do any of our homework, and then we'd do coke and get it done in 2 nights for, like, mid-semester and stuff like that. It was not ideal, and I'm lucky that I've never experienced heroin. My RISD roommate OD'd once or twice, and I had asked him to get some for me so I could try it, and he didn't, and I thank him, because I would have gone down that rabbit hole. Hugely. I have so many friends here in Seattle that, like, grew up with kids in high school with giant holes in their arms because they've been addicted to heroin and
I
ooh,
never shot anything up, like, that was my line. I would snort, I would smoke, I would do any of that, never
right,
shot up
right. I
anything.
was like, "I just wanna try to snort
Yeah,
some."
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, no."
Yeah,
I'm like,
the good old days.
well, when you're in your 20s, shit can happen to you that you can recover from. I just think it's harder as you get older, and definitely with glass, there's a lot of alcohol issues
Believe it, yeah.
because people like to socialize and dehydrate their bodies after they've been sweating all day, so but at a certain age, it's like, I can't do this."
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't
Well, at
work.
the time, I was a roadie touring around with rock and roll bands. I was based at the 930 Club, and but then I decided to quit, and I was just like, I can't continue this job because my job was do drugs, set up for bands, do drugs with bands, break down bands, and then buy drugs for everybody else in the crew and all this kind of stuff. And so it was just it was a time in my life, and it was a lot of fun, and I'm very lucky that I got out without being arrested, and and I was able to move on, and it's still with me, but I mean, again, 21 years ago.
But it colors your
Ah,
life. I mean, I have a
great
friend who's
stories.
a very high artist, and one of the things he started out doing was being a roadie for Husker Du,
Ah,
and, like
I love it.
so yeah, exactly. So exactly. Yeah, yeah. So you guys had like, he loved it, and he loved that experience, and he was at, like, the pinnacle of music at that time, but then, like, he had to go and do other stuff to, whatever, go to RISD, teach at Yale,
Ah, rough life.
do things. Yeah, the rough life.
Yeah,
But yeah, here's one of my little
there we
babies.
go. I'm seeing an egg-shaped, it looks like it's made out of, like, what looks like bolts shapes kind of thing, like, or no, not bolt, nuts. Nuts.
Yeah, well, they're hexagonal
Yeah.
forms, but you can so they're hexagonal units that are woven together with copper wire. But the special thing about them is that when I heat them, they turn conical. So you can think of them a little bit like the rocks in a Roman arch being keyed together to fit into place. So this is how B cells are made
Mhm.
with hexagon. They make them in a hexagonal form, and also the skeletons for coral colonies
Interesting.
are hexagonal tubes. So they just fit together, and they're really strong when they're all together like that.
Could
And
could
then,
you
yeah.
could you remove the wire after you've sort of melted it all together?
Oh, there's no melting.
Oh, okay.
They're all loose. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
I can hear it.
That one, they're loose. This one, they're really tied down. So I'm holding a sculpture that's some stainless steel squiggle. And then in between the stainless steel squiggle, there's a flat plane of my glass hollow marini.
Blue.
Yeah, they're woven together. Yeah, this one's a blue. And it's you know what this is? It's like a test. I want to make this the size of a Calder and have it be outside. Like, so I'm testing to see like what kind of forms would be wonderful if they were like 20 feet tall. So I like to think of where public art could go, although it's hard to put glass in public art. I do like working with the community in public art together. So even if I do glass, I try to involve my community. Then here's a weird one. I made a piece like this before and I called it Calyx. So it looks like a bunch of volcanoes joined together in a pelt and wrapped around. So now it looks a little bit like a water bear or a tardigrade.
Mm-hmm.
So it has that sort of inside and outside happening at the same time. So it's a little bit of a, like there's a little squeeze. You can see a little give in the work. So it's all separate pieces just bound together with copper wire, which has a good memory. I try not to make my work too flexible that it can flex back and forth like this because that would snap it. So I work with having the metal supports in it sometimes and to make it larger. But yeah, just wanted to,
Throw some visual aids into an audio podcast. I totally understand.
or just talk about the construction a little bit that comes more from engineering from nature, like how Buckminster Fuller thinks of thought of his way of engineering things. He looked at nature and he learned from nature how the nature engineered things, and he mimicked that in his architecture. It's taken me a long time to kind of figure out exactly why he's so cool, but that's one of it. But he was an engineer, but it was more of a bioengineer. So I do believe in uh, what is it, biomimicry, that if we survive as a species, we have to learn how to mimic how nature does things and to adapt our lives to that because this rectilinear existence does not work with nature. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, Buckminster Fuller is one of my life dreams to be able to buy one of his designs as for a home design and build it.
Oh, wow.
By the
Oh, the geodesic,
No,
whatever.
actually, the one that I love is a underground one that goes in a spiral and like light comes all the way through it. It's absolutely stunning.
Is that in Israel? Is that
I think
the,
somebody has built it since then. Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing it when I was like 20.
look up Friedrich Kiesler? He was a German
Mm,
architect, and he dealt a lot with like cave structure. And he has this beautiful piece that's like underground with an oculus and tiered steps coming up, and then this obelisk coming to meet the oculus. Oh my goodness! Like I mm, maybe at one point you'll be able to go and see the great work, the great earthwork that's going on by James Turrell. I understand he had like a 50-year project, but they're trying to shorten it so they can get people in to get more revenue so they can keep going with it. So yeah, exactly, right? You know, you have high ideals, but you need the money. So yeah, that's how it goes. But it would be fun to he does a lot of that interior space, exterior space.
mm.
And I often think of my pieces, although they're small, as architectural models. On the boat, I used to build a lot of cities out of notepaper and tape.
Nice. All right.
Anyway, thanks again.
I hope you're enjoying and learning from the podcast as much as I am. If you like the podcast, we would appreciate a 5-star rating, and a nice comment would be greatly appreciated. Please tell your friends to listen and subscribe also. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If there's someone that you admire or respect in the art world that you want to hear me talk to, please send me a message through Instagram. I will do my best to get them as a guest. Additionally, if you have any questions for future guests, like for me, I want to talk to somebody who does exhibition design, like talk about flow of traffic, where to put the right artwork, what the height, the optimum heights are, wall colors, temperature, all this kind of stuff. If anybody knows somebody like that, I want to know the answer to those questions. So I'm wondering for you, what are the things that you want to know about that I could possibly find for you? Send me your questions, and I will do my best to get them answered for you. In the near future, we will be starting a newsletter, so please sign up on our website, wisefoolpod.com. And no matter what you're doing right now, try to make it fun.